Okay, let's get going. The original and new seven wonders of the world. And by the way, again, there's my, if you wanted to look at any of my lectures on YouTube, I've got about 10 of them. And not all of them are the ones that I've done on the cruise here, but the ones that I'm doing on the cruise for the very, that haven't been recorded previously, my wife is recording them, and they will end up on YouTube hopefully eventually, maybe in a month after we get back in port. So let's just, and by the way, this is the first time I've presented this lecture for Holland America. It's a brand new one. The original seven wonders of the world. Let's take a look at them. First of all, establishing time and place. Alexander the Great, his conquest of much of the known Western world, enabled the Greeks to become familiar with civilizations that they'd never been exposed to before, like the Egyptians and the Babylonians and the Persians. And so it was in these newly conquered lands, and of course he went much further than this as well, but it was in these new lands that we find the classic or old seven wonders of the world. Now, a little bit of background on it. A fellow by the name of Antipater of Sidon listed them in the 2nd century BC. And in effect, he wanted to create a bucket list for people who were living at that point in time, sites that they could visit within the empire. Now, the number 7, why 7? Why not 8 or 6? 7 is a very special number. The earth was created in 7 days. There are 7 days in a week. And also the numbers 3 and 7 are considered to be complete numbers. But in order to qualify for this list of 7 wonders, they had to meet these 3 criteria. They had to be really, really big. And being very large, they would represent great feats of engineering. They were very, very difficult to build. And also, in addition, they had to be works of great artistry, great beauty. So let's say that you are retiring from Athens. You did very well on the Athens stock market. You and your wife are ready to go see the world. And so the first place you visit on our list is the Great Pyramid of Giza. And by the way, these are listed in chronological order from the earliest ones to the last ones completed. So the Great Pyramid of Giza, also known as the Great Pyramid of Cheops or Khufu. Now, they used state-of-the-art technology, which, as you can see, was very, very labor-intensive. It's really quite remarkable what they were able to do without the benefit of modern technology. They created, over a 20-year period, the largest stone structure ever built, period. From that point until now, and perhaps forever. 13 million tons of stone, some of them just enormous. You wonder how they were able to move a 15-ton stone. And so precisely cut that there was very, very little tolerance in between the stones, less than 1/50th of an inch. And of course it was lined up with the 4 cardinal points of the compass. For centuries, for 3,800 years, it was the tallest man-made structure in the world. So who knows what replaced it? That's a really tough question. Old St. Paul's Cathedral in London, which was completed in the 13th century after being under construction for 200 years, was 9 feet taller than the Great Pyramid. And of course, it doesn't exist anymore. And up until the early 20th century, all of the tallest buildings, each time a taller building was built, it was a cathedral, until the early 20th century when skyscrapers came into being. We're still learning a lot about this pyramid. In fact, just in the Washington Post about a month and a half ago, there was an article about cosmic rays revealing a large open area in the pyramid that they didn't even know existed until they made that discovery. So we're still learning things about the Great Pyramid. The second of the 7 wonders of the world, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Josephus was a Jewish Roman historian, and he wrote, "In this palace, King Nebuchadnezzar II erected very high walks, supported by stone pillars, and by replenishing it with all sorts of trees, he rendered the prospect of an exact resemblance of a mountainous country. He built it for his wife. She came from Medea, a mountainous country. She was homesick, so he wanted to create in this location an environment that would make her feel comfortable and not be so homesick. And by the way, you'll notice as we go through the list of old and new wonders of the world, so many of them are motivated by the love of a man for a woman or a woman for a man. He apparently imported from all over the known world at that point in time a vast variety of trees and shrubs and vines, 30 stories of terraces. It was absolutely magnificent. But we don't know where it was. We really, in fact, there's some concern that maybe it didn't even exist. Although there are some records that indicate it did, there's also not much more about it. We just don't know exactly where it was. There are two potential locations. One south of Baghdad in what we know as the area where Babylon was located, and another one up in Nineveh. The Assyrian Empire, King Sennacherib, apparently had built some very famous gardens. And so we know actually more about these gardens than we don't know about possibly the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. The Babylonians didn't keep any records of it, and so that causes historians to wonder, actually, did it really exist? But the Greek historians had lots of records of it. Our third classic wonder of the world is the Temple of Artemis, or completed, I should say, in 800 BC. And there it is at the end of Asia Minor, Turkey today, in the city of Ephesus. And Antipater of Sidon, apparently, when he came up with this list, he did it based on his own personal experience. And as we can see when we read this quote, he visited 6 of the 7. I have seen the walls and hanging gardens of ancient Babylon, the statue of Olympian Zeus, the Colossus of Rhodes, the mighty work of the high pyramids, the tomb of Mausolus. But when I saw the temple at Ephesus rising to the clouds, all these other wonders were put in the shade. I can't imagine a building putting the Great Pyramid, for example, in the shade, so to speak. This is a scale model much smaller than the original, because the original was huge. So you can read these dimensions. 127 columns. By the way, the goddess Artemis was also known as Diana, the goddess of the hunt. Earthquakes are very common in that part of the world, and it was destroyed and rebuilt a number of times before it was finally destroyed for the last time in 401 AD. Here are some of the remnants that are in the British Museum today. Perhaps some of you have been to London and visited the British Museum. Again, works of great artistry, just beautiful, beautiful works. This is the only wonder of the original 7 wonders of the world that's mentioned in the Bible. You may recall, those of you who are familiar with the New Testament, the book of Acts, that Paul had some very, very successful missionary experiences. And in Acts 19:26, it's recorded. Okay, let me set the stage a little bit more. The person speaking, who's being quoted, was a silversmith, a man who lived in the vicinity of the temple and made his living by creating artifacts that tourists coming by might buy, just like the people that we've seen during our journey on this cruise. So he was concerned that Paul's success was cutting into his business, because as people converted to Christianity, they no longer worshiped Diana. So that not only this, our craft, is in danger to be set at naught, but also that the temple of the great goddess Diana should be despised, and her magnificence should be destroyed, whom all Asia and the world worshipeth. It was a temple known throughout the world, and he was bemoaning the fact that this Christian apostle in their midst was converting people to another religion and thereby reducing his business. And this is what it looks like today. Number 4, the statue of Zeus at Olympia. Olympia was located on the Peloponnesian Peninsula, south of Greece, and it was a very, very special place. People felt when they visited Olympia, they were going to an alternative universe, the universe where the gods lived. And of course, Olympia was where the Olympic Games originated. And this is the layout of where those, of Olympia. Up here is the gymnasium. And by the way, the gymnasium was used for training, used for socializing, used for intellectual pursuits, all kinds of things. And the word gymnasium comes from the Greek word gymnos, which means naked. And the competitors would compete without any clothing on. It was, they were in effect honoring the gods in doing it that way, and also honoring the human body. Over here was the stadium where most of the competition took place, and right in the center of things was the Temple of Zeus. A huge, magnificent building, but the reason it was famous wasn't the building, but what was in the building. The statue of Zeus, created by Phidias, 43 feet tall. Now, it's sort of hard to imagine what 43 feet means in terms of, in our understanding of scale. So just to give you an idea, the Lincoln Memorial is 19 feet tall. This statue was 43 feet tall. Ivory plates and gold panels covered it, and in the left hand was a scepter denoting the authority. This is the god of gods, so to speak, the number one god. So he ruled over all the gods, and in his right hand was a small statue of the goddess of victory. Does anyone know who the goddess of victory was? Nike, exactly. And now we all know why that shoe company has that name. Okay, it was destroyed under circumstances that we're really not at all familiar with. And this is what Olympia looks like today. The mausoleum of Halicarnassus is number 5 on our list. It's located a little, there's Ephesus where we were a few minutes ago, located a little bit further south along the coast. And it was built in honor of a provincial governor by the name of the Persian Empire, by the name of Mausolus, by his wife. He had died, and she wanted to create a memorial to him. And interestingly enough, she died before it was before it was completed. But the artisans continued to work on it, even though they weren't being paid, because they felt like this would be the absolute apex of their career if they had been able to finish this magnificent building. Now, of course, the term mausoleum comes from the tomb of Mausolus, a mausoleum being a building built above the ground for housing people who have passed away. That's where the word mausoleum comes from. And this is what it looks like today. And again, earthquakes, major factor in terms of the longevity of large buildings in that part of the world. It lasted, it was the last one to survive, though, other than the Great Pyramid. And beautiful artwork. Once again, art was paramount. And if you look closely, again, these are images of sculptures that are in the British Museum. If you look closely, you'll notice that it's women fighting men. There's a man, woman, and so on and so forth. The Amazons, the myth of the Amazons. The Colossus of Rhodes. First of all, I need to disabuse you all of the notion that he stood astride the entrance to the harbor. There was no indication that that was the case. It would have been almost impossible to build it that way. So this statue actually was on one side or the other of the entrance to the harbor. Located on the island of Rhodes. A little bit of historical background here. When Alexander the Great died, his three major generals divided up the empire among them. And they began to fight each other. And the people of Rhodes had associated themselves with Ptolemy, and Antigus invaded Rhodes because he was trying to acquire Ptolemy's possessions. There was a major battle, and one of the key factors in the battle, this super siege tower, this enormous structure, was built. It had to be propelled by 200 men, and they were going to move it right up to the wall and be able to jump over the wall. Apparently a moat was created and flooded, and that kept the siege tower from serving its purpose. And after the battle, the siege tower was taken apart, and the raw materials were used to create the Colossus, this huge statue representing the island's patron deity, Helios. It was absolutely enormous. Let's give you again a sense of scale. The Colossus of Rhodes was 160 feet with the pedestal. In other words, from the ground all the way up to the top. Statue of Liberty, 150 feet without the pedestal. So just imagine, without the pedestal, how tall the Statue of Liberty is, and that's how it was actually just a little bit shorter than the Colossus of Rhodes. It lasted less time than any of the other 7. 54 years. Major earthquake again, and the structure collapsed. And it lay there for 800 years. It was so large that the ankle was 5 feet in diameter, the thigh was 11 feet in diameter. The Roman philosopher Pliny said, "Even as it lies, it excites our wonder and admiration. Few men can clasp the thumb in their arms, and its fingers are larger than most statues." And I found myself thinking, boy, wouldn't that be a great place for kids to play? They'd be climbing, my grandkids would be climbing all over that thing. Well, it lay there for 800 years until the Arabs conquered the island of Rhodes. They cut it up into pieces, and it was hauled away on 900 camels. So it existed, but in a totally different form for a long period of time. And this is what Rhodes looks like today. Okay, our last of the 7 classic wonders of the world was the Lighthouse of Alexandria, located, of course, in Alexandria, Egypt. It was the prototype for all lighthouses. It was the very first lighthouse in the world. Apparently, it was able to create a light that could be seen 100 miles out to sea. They did that with a furnace and a bronze mirror that could project the light out to sea. It was really quite a remarkable thing. And in fact, of all of the 7 wonders, it was the only one that had a practical use. All of the others weren't built for a particular purpose. This one was. It was built on a small island off the shore of Alexandria. And Sylvia, what is the word for lighthouse in Spanish?
Faro.
Faro. The Romance languages used the name of the island to represent the word lighthouse in Spanish and Portuguese and so forth. Only the Great Pyramid was taller than the Lighthouse of Alexandria, and it stood a long time, 1,500 years. Again, earthquakes brought it down. These are representations of the lighthouse on coins that were cut at that point in time. And interestingly enough, in 1994, Greek archaeologists, interesting that they were Greek, rediscovered the remains of the lighthouse on the floor of Alexandria's harbor. And so now they are exploring that and perhaps lifting some of those things to the surface. So those are our 7 wonders, and let's just do a quick recap here. This is a very busy slide here. The length of the bar indicates how many years that particular wonder was in existence, and in the case of the pyramid, is still in existence. And the beginning point when they were created is indicated here, and the scale of each one in relationship to the others is right here. Of course, that's the pyramid, that's the lighthouse. Please note that it was only for a very short period of time, 280 to 226, that all 7 of them existed, because the Colossus of Rhodes did not last all that long. Okay, let's take a look at the new 7 wonders of the world. 2000 to 2007, a new organization called the New 7 Wonders Foundation, based in Zurich, conducted a worldwide poll using the internet, obviously. 100 million people participated in the poll, selecting the new 7 wonders of the world. And when I show you the list right now, I want you to think about how many. I know many of you have traveled many places. I'm going to ask how many of you have been to these 7 wonders of the world. Take a look at it. Okay, how many of you have been to 5 of them? Wow. How many? 6. Okay, I see a 6. Any 7s? 7, my goodness. All 7 of them. I was going to say any 8. No. 7. Wow. Well, you have filled your new 7 wonders bucket list, the way the ancient Greeks tried to do it. So let's take a look at each one of them. The Great Wall of China. And by the way, the sequence is not in terms of the number of votes they got. We really don't know how many votes each one of them got, but they got more than everybody else. So these are the top 7. I'm progressing from China west across the earth. So that's the sequence that I've followed here. Great Wall of China.
Nice picture.
Magnificent. Now, there were, of course, a number of great walls, totaling 21,196 kilometers. But when we talk about the Great Wall of China, we're really talking about the Ming Great Wall, which is what is in existence today, 8,851 kilometers. Magnificent, beautiful. Look at those pictures. Just breathtaking. Now, the Ming Dynasty created the wall for 2 purposes. Number 1, protect the empire from raids and invasions of nomadic groups, the pagan hordes that would come across the border and rape and pillage and destroy our society and our empire. The second purpose, to establish a border controls, to control immigration, keep the foreigners out, and impose duties on imports. And actually, it was a miserable failure on both counts. And today, it serves as a symbolic representation of the attempt to isolate themselves from the rest of the world. Can it be seen from outer space? Let's see by a show of hands. How many think it can be seen from outer space? Okay, about 25-30%. This is what Neil Armstrong said. I have not yet found somebody who has told me they've seen the Wall of China from Earth orbit. So, not quite. The Taj Mahal. Some of these pictures I just want to pause for a minute and let you absorb the sheer beauty. Located in Agra, India. Again, built because of love. The Muslim Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan built it in memory of his wife, his deceased wife, Mumtaz Mahal. And there's the Mahal in the name. He loved her a lot. A lot. 827 million. estimated cost. And it is absolutely magnificent inside. Very unfortunately, I was just reading earlier this year that the Indian state where the Taj Mahal is located has cut back significantly on the maintenance and support of the Taj Mahal, and it is beginning to deteriorate. And so if you have a desire to go there, I would suggest you not postpone your trip. Petra, southern Jordan. Apparently it was the capital of a nomadic tribe of Arabs called the Nabateans. Apparently they weren't totally nomadic because they decided to set up a trading hub close to regional trading routes, and that's Petra. And apparently it was not really known to the rest of to the west anyway for quite a few years until 1812 when a Swiss explorer discovered it. Beautiful, beautiful carvings in the stone. They apparently were, it was an area that is subject to flash floods. When it does rain, it really rains. And they were able, using tunnels and water chambers, they were able to create an artificial oasis in the middle of a very desolate land. But they also created magnificent structures. They really knew how to work the stone. The Colosseum, the iconic symbol of imperial Rome, symbolically and precisely in the center of Rome. Largest amphitheater in the history of the world, up to 80,000 spectators. By the way, again, I was doing a little research, getting ready for the cruise, and apparently just this year, or recently anyway, they've opened the upper areas to, actually up here, to people for the first time. Currently they've restored it enough to enable people to go to the very top. 2 subterranean levels. They had 80 vertical shafts that could quickly and easily bring cages of wild animals and gladiators up to the surface of the amphitheater. And speaking of animals, the Romans imported giraffes, rhinoceroses, hippopotamuses, elephants, lions, tigers, bears, on and on and on. They had quite a large group of wild animals that would participate in the activities of the Colosseum. Because the Colosseum was used for gladiatorial combat, animal hunts, executions, the reenactment of famous battles, as well as classic mythological dramas. Okay, the next couple we have already covered fairly well in 2 of my lectures. Chichen Itza, the lecture on the Maya. It was built during the classic Maya period, right at the end of the classic Maya period. And it is just really one of the most iconic, beautiful Mayan ruins that are available to us today. Located just southwest of Cancun, just a couple of hours, 2 to 3 hours outside of Cancun. And these are the buildings that we saw in my lecture. The Temple of Kukulkan, the ball court, the observatory, the Temple of the Warriors. Machu Picchu. We talked about Machu Picchu during my lecture on the Pizarro and the Incas. Located in south-central Peru, contains some of the most beautiful stonework. They were masters of stonework, and you can't even insert a knife between the edges of many of these stones. Terraces used for agriculture to support the main complex. Absolutely beautiful. And the last of the new wonders of the world is Christ the Redeemer statue located in Rio de Janeiro, on top of Corcovado Mountain, overlooking Rio. So it has this magnificent view of Rio from the top there. And look at these dimensions, 98 feet tall and 92 feet wide, the arms stretched out. So it's just really, the arms are almost as wide as the height of the statue. And what a beautiful view it has of Sugarloaf Mountain and Rio de Janeiro. So those are the new seven wonders of the world. We've talked about the old seven wonders of the world. Before I complete my lecture today, I'd like to share with you very quickly the runners-up. The ones that didn't quite get enough votes to be counted among the top seven. And I won't spend a lot of time on these, we'll just go through them very quickly. Now some of these I think you may be thinking, well, why didn't it make the list? Just not enough votes. I'm sure many of you have been to many of these places as well. Of course, that's the Disney Princess Castle. By the way, Eiffel was in on the building of the Statue of Liberty, and of course this tower as well. Sydney Opera House. So those were the runners-up. And so this concludes my last lecture. I'd like to leave with you an old Irish blessing. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind always be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face and rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Thank you.